We all face obstacles, right? Every single day. But what if I told you that the very thing standing in your way wasn't actually a roadblock, but a hidden opportunity? It turns out how we look at challenges can literally change everything, and there's a simple story that shows us exactly how. Okay, just imagine this for a second. You're on a journey, walking down a path, and boom, right in the middle of it, there's a giant rock. This rock is your obstacle. Maybe it's a huge project at work, or a difficult conversation you've been putting off, or maybe a personal goal that just feels impossible right now. So be honest with yourself for a moment. When you come across one of these rocks, what's your first instinct? Do you look up at the sky and complain? Do you wonder who was lazy enough to leave it there? Or do you immediately start thinking, okay, how do I move this thing? That very question, that choice, is right at the heart of a simple but really profound story. It's one of those parables that reveals a fundamental truth about who we are, what responsibility really means, and where you find real, genuine opportunity. So our story kicks off with a wise king. And this king was curious. He really wanted to understand the character of the people he ruled. He wanted to know who had a mindset of complaint versus who had a mindset of contribution. So he came up with a pretty strange and unusual test. The plan itself was actually beautiful in its simplicity. First, he picked the kingdom's busiest road. Then, he ordered a massive boulder to be placed right smack in the middle of it. And finally, he just hid himself nearby, completely unseen, so he could just watch and see how his people would react. And, well, it didn't take long for people to show up. First came some of the kingdom's wealthiest merchants, probably in their fancy carriages. They were followed by the king's own courtiers, the people from his court. Even soldiers and everyday townspeople came across this giant obstacle. And what did every single one of them have in common? Well, they saw the stone, they were annoyed by it, and they complained. Loudly. Why doesn't the king take care of the roads properly? They all grumbled. They criticized, they blamed others for the problem, but not one of them even tried to move it. They just walked around it and kept going. And right there, you see it. Two totally different ways of dealing with the exact same obstacle. There's the complainer's path. That one's easy. You see a problem, you figure out who to blame, and then you wait for someone else to fix it. But then there's the responsible path, and that's about seeing the exact same problem, but taking ownership and actually doing something about it. So as the day was wearing on, another traveler came down the road. But this person wasn't a wealthy merchant or a high-ranking courtier. Nope, it was a simple farmer, carrying a heavy load of vegetables he'd just picked. From his hiding spot, the king leaned in. He watched closely. The farmer's reaction. This was going to be the real test of his whole experiment. What would this man do when faced with the same obstacle that everyone else just complained about? And the farmer, he didn't complain. He didn't curse. He just quietly put down his vegetables, sized up the boulder, and then he got to work. With all of his strength, he pushed and he strained against it. It took a tremendous amount of effort, but he kept at it, he persisted, until he finally rolled the huge stone out of the road. Exhausted, but probably pretty satisfied that the road was now clear for everyone else, the farmer went to pick up his load of vegetables. But just as he was about to leave, his eye caught something on the ground, right in the spot where that huge boulder had just been sitting. It was a purse, and when he picked it up, he could feel it was heavy with coins. He opened it, and sure enough, it was filled to the brim with gold. And tucked inside the bag with all that gold was a small note written by the king himself. It said, "This gold is for the one who took the responsibility to move the stone." And right there, that was the entire point of the king's test. So, let's step back from the story for a minute and really unpack the lesson here. Because this isn't just about a king and a farmer, is it? This is a lesson about how we can and probably should approach every single obstacle in our own life. What this story does is it totally reframes what responsibility even means. It's not just some chore or a duty. It's a perspective. It's the understanding that the obstacle isn't just in your way. The obstacle is the way. Hidden inside every challenge is an opportunity to grow, to get stronger, or, like in the farmer's case, to find an unexpected reward. So, what are the big takeaways? Well, first, complaining achieves absolutely nothing. It feels good for a second, but it doesn't move the stone. Action is what creates change. Second, the opportunity you're probably looking for is almost always disguised as hard work. And finally, the world doesn't really reward people who just point out problems. It rewards the people who actually solve them. And let's not forget this key detail because it's so important. The farmer had no idea there was gold under that stone. He didn't move it because he was hoping for a reward. He moved it because it was the right thing to do. He saw a problem that was affecting his whole community and he just took it upon himself to fix it. The reward was just a happy consequence of his character. And that, of course, brings this whole thing right back to you. We all have stones in our path, every single one of us. So the question this story leaves us with is a powerful one. What's the stone in your life that you've been complaining about? And what might happen if today you decided to stop complaining and just start pushing? What opportunity might be waiting for you, hidden just underneath?